You are so welcome to the fifth episode of the creation of our accounting system in MS Excel. Welcome. In a previous video, we saw how to build the trial balance, a six-column trial balance with opening balances, movements, and closing balances. In this video, we are going to be building our income statement and possibly our balance sheet if we are not in short of time, because we are trying as much as possible to make this video short. So um first thing, the income statement will be based on the trial balance, just that it is going to just capture expense and income accounts from the trial balance, because this trial balance will show all the account types that are in the business: expense, revenues, assets, fixed assets, and everything liabilities are included in the trial balance. But we are going to extract only incomes and expenses in order to build our profit and loss or our income statement, and the rest is going to be used to produce our balance sheet. So let's get started. We have the pivot, we have the trial balance here, and we need to build our income statement. So to make it easy, we are going to use pivot tables. Pivot tables are very easy to use, and it helps us have inside informations based on the table. Before you create a pivot table, you should have had a table, and already this trial balance is in a table. So we're just going to use this table in order to produce a pivot table, which will help us to capture some specific information from the table relating to what we need in order to build the income statement. How do I go about it? I will just need to click anywhere in this table, go to insert and take pivot table. I could take recommended pivot table. They will recommend me some pivot tables I can use to have inside information about the data. But in this case, I'm going to just take pivot table. When I take pivot table, you will see it's going to capture the whole table itself. And here, I can make a pivot table in a new worksheet, or I can say an existing worksheet. If I already had an existing worksheet where I wanted to place this pivot table, I could just click on this existing and select the worksheet and the line where it should have appeared. But in this case, I'm just going to take new worksheet. So I will just take OK, and it will just create it for me in a new worksheet. So or if you wanted to create, first of all, a worksheet for your income statement, you could equally do same. So I can just delete this worksheet. I can just delete this and delete everything. I just create a new worksheet that I'm going to call income statement. However, it's the same. We could still rename the other worksheet. And then from here, I'll come to insert pivot table. I'll take existing worksheet. I come and stand at the level of the location. Then I go to income statement and I specify where I want the pivot table to start. Like I can select, for example, C4, and I take OK. So you see it has created the pivot table there. Now, when it creates the pivot table, actually nothing is going to be visible. We just have pivot table fields, which can actually help us to filter the different type of information we want to show in the pivot table coming from the table itself. So how do I go about it? I will want, for example, in this pivot table to get all the expenses. As a result, I will want to activate on this side the account. So I can click on account, or if I click on account and it takes me to any other place, I can carry it and drop it where I want it to be. So I don't want it to be in the column, I want to be in a row. So same as I could carry it from here, come drop it here. So it's practically the same thing. Next thing, I will okay, I can decide not to work with account numbers. So I will just deactivate account numbers, carry account names and place here. So I'll prefer to work with account names. So from here, what else do I need? I need amounts. And the amounts I'm going to be using are the amounts that are in the closing balance of the trial balance. So this debit and this credit. However, here it was called debit 2, credit 2. So those are the amounts I'm going to be using, because all these, we don't need them again in the preparation of our income statement and balance sheet. We'll be using just the balances. So I get at the level of this income statement. I get back here and I click anywhere on the table, on the pivot table. However, then this will appear, because if I'm out, it will not appear. But if I'm in the pivot table, it will appear. Then I will take since I want to filter expenses, and that expenses already were on the debit balances, so I'm going to call for the debit amount. If I just click on it, you see it can put it anywhere. It has just put it under rows, but this is not really that presentable for me, so I'm going to carry this information and put it under value, so that it should bring the values beside the account names. But in terms of values, what is it doing? It is counting. It's there to count of debit too. So I don't actually want it to count the number of items that exist. I want it to sum the values of, or get to the total values of these items. So I will come at the level of the drop down beside the field for debit, and I take a value field setting. So from here you can see it is counting, but I'm going to take sum. So I will take sum and I take okay. So you can see it will instead bring the values. So in this case, you will notice that he has brought the values of all the amounts that are debited at the level of the closing balance. Good. So from here, I'll come back to the income statement. You see, as a noun, it is mixing everything. Let it be cash, customers, which are not actually the account types we need. Meaning we need to filter such that it should take only into consideration expense accounts, because presently I want to build the column for expenses in our profit and loss. So how do I go about that? Actually, here there's no field for me to determine I just have the account balance type, debit balance, credit balance, but it's still going to be a little bit complicated. Not only expenses have debit balances. So if I filter in terms of debit balances, like if I say debit balance and I bring it under filter, and I come in the drop down list here and I say debit balances, you see it will filter all the debit balances in the list of chart of accounts, in the list of a chart of account, in the list of items that are appearing at the level of our trial balance. But still, goods is not an expense. Things like cash is not an expense account, so it's still going to be limited. As a result, I need to specify only the accounts that are expenses. So I will come to the trial balance. It means I need to add a new field that will permit me to know whether the account is an expense account or not. As a result, in our chart of account or in our accounting plan, already we had the account natures, so we'll have to use these account natures. But for us to use these account natures, I think it should first of all appear at the level of our trial balance. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to add a new column for me to add the account nature. So I'm going to take insert new column. So I'm just going to call this account nature. So I can use the VLOOKUP function in order to look up to this account number at the level of our accounting plan. So I'm just quickly going to use the VLOOKUP function, but before that I will use the if error. Then I use the VLOOKUP, looking up to this value in the table array, in this table array, and the column index number is column number 1, 2, 3. Yes, and I just want an exact match, so I close bracket for the VLOOKUP function, take comma in order to put the value if error. So good, now I have this. If I don't want this to be seen or visible at the level of our trial balance already, there is a little problem because I've shifted the table this side, and the headers I had given are no more matching. So what if I hide this column? Okay, I cannot hide it uniquely. I will have to hide everything. Let's see. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to shift back this information by one cell to the right. Okay, it will not go because the cells are actually merged. So I will unmerge the cells, then I'll carry the content of the cell one step to the right, then I'll merge them back so that actually the opening balances should be placed where they are supposed to be, so that our headers should actually portray what's supposed to show. So from here, I can hide this column if I want. If I don't want to, if I don't want to be seeing it, if I don't also want to be seeing this one, I can equally hide it. So from here, I can come back to the income statement, and you can see in the income statement, the fields from the pivot table are not yet visible. Like the field I have just added for the account nature is not yet visible. You need to understand that when you make any editing on the data source, which is the trial balance in this case, trial balance is our data source. If there is any modification here, the pivot table will not automatically capture the modifications. As a result, you need to always refresh the table. But at the end of this, I'm going to show you a way to get it refreshed automatically. But for now, I'll just get at the level of the header for and the pivot table, and I'll take refresh. When I take refresh, you'll see an account nature the account nature I just created in the table or data source has then appeared. So instead of me filtering or giving filters in terms of balance type, I'm just going to remove this and put the account nature. So from here, I'll take, you see, account nature has appeared there as a filter. From there, I can take the drop down list and the filter only expenses. I could also filter many account types. It means that, for example, if you have many account types you're dealing with, you can actually select multiple items. But yeah, I need only this, so I take okay. So you can see it has given me all the expense accounts and their amounts, all the expense that actually existed. Sorry, at the level of the chart of account, there is this account that I just made uh, just to test something, but we're going to see into that later. So those are the different accounts that are there. Now, I can see something here that's wrong. Purchase of equipment is not supposed to be an expense account, so I'll go at the level of the chart of account. Purchase of equipment, or the account types and everything is just completely wrong. So I'm just going to check on this later on. Let's continue with what we're working on. So you see, as I've changed the account nature here to be asset, for example, you will see it has not refreshed here automatically. So I have to come to pivot table and take refresh. So you will see it will no more be available. Now, these are for all the expenses. You can see it has put the grand total for all the expenses. What else will I need? I will equally need all the revenue. So I'm going to come back to still at the level of our trail balance. And what will I do? I'll create another pivot table, and the data source and the source or the location where this pivot table will be still at the level of the income statement, but I'm going to just put it beside. So I'm just going to put it here. Sorry, normally expenses comes before revenues. No, revenues come before expenses, but you can do it some other way. But here I just want it to be so. From here, I'll activate the account names. What else? The amount credited. The amount credited because revenues have credit balances. And the year, since it is not given the sum is counting, I'll come here and I'll take value field setting, then I sum. I take OK. Then I'm equally going to create a filter in terms of the account nature, and I will make sure that here it filters in the form of revenues. So good. So you can see here we have the expenses and the revenues, which is actually pretty good. So from here, all we can do is just to put, for example, the difference in order to get the profit. So here I can just manipulate something there. I can just say equals, okay, we need the result, and the result can either be in the form of a profit or a loss. So I'm just going to put here, like, you can put it some other way you want, but I'm just going to put here net profit, just improvising. I'm just also going to put here net loss. So from here, I'll need the net profit and the net loss. So for a profit, it will obviously be the total revenues minus the total minus the total expenses. Good. But in terms of losses, it will surely be equal to the total expense minus the total revenue, so that it should be positive. But yeah, what have I done? This minus, sorry, I'm going to say equals to this minus this. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is that I could just allow it as a name called result, let it be profit or loss. When it is positive, it's profit. When it is loss, it's negative. But I just wanted to make the differences, net profit and net loss, in different lines. So as a result, what I'll do is that I'll condition such that it should always check whether the difference is positive or negative. If it is positive, then we will put the amount under net profit, but if it is negative, we put the amount under net loss. So what I can do here is that I can condition this function to calculate or to portray a value only if the difference is positive. So I can come here, I'll not delete this, I'll just say at the beginning, if um if the difference between or let me just say, if the revenue is greater than this, the total expenses, then it should actually do revenue minus expenses in this line. But if not, it should just do nothing. So just close bracket. So I've used the if function and said if the total revenue is greater than the total expenses, then it should do total revenue minus total expenses. And if the reverse is true, then it should do nothing. So good. Here I will equally put the same function, and I will say if the total revenues are greater than, sorry, let me start it all over. I'll say if the total revenues are greater than the total expenses, then it should do nothing instead. Meaning, in case the total revenue is greater than total expense, here it should not show anything. But if it is the reverse, meaning if the total expenses are more than the total revenue, before it should do the difference. So I'm just going to close bracket here, and you can see here when there is when the total revenue is actually more than total expenses, at the level of net loss, we're not going to have any amount. So that will just be what I can do in order to get maybe the results. So I can just for example make it look like this if I want, and maybe put it in columns, so in borders. So most of the times you can edit this the way you want it to be, and this is going to surely be our income statement, as simple as that. The same way we can do same for the balance sheet. We can still even duplicate this this worksheet, and then we make it to filter only assets, and on the other side revenue, liabilities and equity. But there is something you need to understand. Okay, before we talk about the next thing, let's just do the balance sheet. So I'm just going to duplicate this worksheet, um the balance sheet, balance sheet, balance sheet, balance sheet. Let's just do balance sheet in the next video. Okay, so let's finish with income statement. So if when I click on this table, there is this field that appears. If I don't want it to always show each time I click on it, I can just come at the level of a pivot table design, and I'd say a field list. I just untick field list. So until I decide it should show before it will show. So this is nice. Now the problem now is when there is a change in the value, like in case this trial balance changes in value. If there's any change here, what's going to happen is that the income statement will not automatically change until we come and press refresh. And if we forget to refresh it at some point in time, it is likely that we will make decisions based on informations that are wrong or that are not real. So as a result, let's try something out. If I come, for example, actually the trial balance will change. This trial balance doesn't depend, only depends on other worksheet. It means the trial balance, we can't come and change anything here because all through their functions. So if I want to change something, or if I want to make an adjustment, I would definitely have to make it at the level of the journal. So if I get at the level of the journal and I post an accounting entry, what's sure is that the trial balance is going to be aware of the change, but the income statement will not be aware because it is a pivot table. So what happens is that in case um let's check on the income statement which accounts are there. um let's check on this account nothing, for example, this account nothing. If I come here, I just created this account nothing in the chart of accounts so I could check on or show you some stuff about the pivot table. So if I come here and I make, for example, a debit of this account, um of this account, at the level of the income statement, it's going to be aware of it because I've already imputed a function. um let me check on something. at the level of the journal, if I make any modification, like I put this account number, this account name, and I get here and I put an amount on the debit side, for example, say 30,000, you will see at the level of our trial balance, this account will be updated with the 30,000 on the debit side, but our income statement will not. As you can see, this this account I just mentioned, nothing, has nothing until I come at the level of pivot table analyze and I take a refresh. You will see it has refreshed. So it means that after every change, and I after every change, when I come to the income statement, I need to always come and refresh. So what if I don't want to always come and refresh, and might be in order to avoid errors and so on? I need to add to this worksheet something, or to this workbook something that would permit it to refresh all the time. As a result, we are going to use a little macro here in the order to make it work. Macros or VBA code. So already, if you do not have activated, or if you have not activated macros before, you need to do that in your worksheet. So what is going to happen is that you need to have a tab here called the developer. If you do not have a menu here for developer, then you can right click on any menu you have there and take customize ribbon. When you take customize ribbon, this is going to appear, and from here you will see developer will be unticked on your own side. So you tick on the developers option. When you tick on the developers option, next thing you need to do is to save back this workbook, and as a macro enabled workbook, because if you do not save it as a macro enabled workbook, anything we're going to do later will be lost after you close the workbook. So I'm just going to save it again. I'm going to save it rapidly. So when saving, I'll go to save as. Sorry, I take save as, I take browse, and in saving this, at the level of the save as type, I'll not allow it as Excel workbook, but I'll take the drop down list and take Excel macro enabled. So the extension is XLSM. So I'll take Excel macro enabled workbook. So I take this option and I take save. Good. Now our workbook is in the form of macro enabled. Now we can write a macro that will permit us to always refresh this workbook, or to always refresh the pivot table each time there is change in other tables. What I'm going to do is I will go to developer option, then I will take VBA, or I just use the shortcut Alt plus F11. So when I take Visual Basic, this is the Visual Basic for application window that will appear. So from here, we are going to make in such a way that it should automatically refresh. But for it to automatically refresh, we need to put a code in those worksheets that will be making changes. For example, in here, the trial balance is not going to be making changes. It is just going to be a reflection of the main worksheet that makes changes, and the changes are made at the level of the journal. However, if there are many worksheets that are going to be affecting this income statement, what we're about to do, you need to do it in all those worksheets. For now, the main worksheet that will affect the income statement will be the journal, because it is in the journal that we record transactions, and from there the trial balance is aware of whatsoever is going on in the journal in the form of movements, and the income statement will then reflect towards the trial balance. So I get back to my Visual Basic. I stand on the journal worksheet. Here it is sheet 3 journal. So make sure you double click on the journal worksheet. When you're here, you have to get to the object top here, and you select worksheet. Don't allow it to general. When you select worksheet, you will see a code name is going to appear as a worksheet selection change. So that is what you need to do. Next thing you need to do is to come at the procedure drop down list, and instead of it being selection change, you have to select change only, not selection change. So we don't need the selection change, we need the worksheet change, not the worksheet selection change. So I'm going to delete this worksheet selection change and allow only worksheet change. In here, we're going to write a short code which will help us to edit, or to refresh the income statement all the time. So what I'm going to do, or let me not say the income statement, let me just say all the pivot tables all the time. So here I'm going to call for a variable, and that variable, for us to call variables in Visual Basic, we use the syntax dim. So I go ahead and I type dim, I will just create a variable called p. So dim p as we are going to call this variable a pivot cache. This a pivot cache. Good. Now, next thing we're going to do, we're going to say for each uh, for each p, the variable we call for each p in this workbook, for each p in this workbook dot pivot caches, take the enter key, p dot refresh. Good. So next thing I'm doing is next space p. So this is the 4-line code we need to enter. The 4-line code we need to enter at the level of the journal worksheet, so that each time we make modifications in here, it should refresh the pivot caches, the pivot tables that we have in our workbook. So in case there is another worksheet that will be affected or that will change with time, we need to put this same code in there. Like for example, the opening balances in this exercise was in the worksheet exercise here. So I could also put it or paste it here. Like I just copied it from journal with Control plus C. I've just pasted it here with Control plus V, so that each time there is also a change in this worksheet, it should refresh the whole workbook or all the tables which are in the workbook. If there is any other sheet here that is going to be changing or having changes which will affect the tables in our program, then we need to put the same code. So from there, I'll just close this, and henceforth check what's going to happen. Presently on this account, nothing, it is written there 30,000, right? So let's get at the level of the journal again, and instead of 30,000, let's put a figure like this. Let me just put a very big figure so you can see the difference. When we get to the income statement, you will see that figure is there, but before it could not do that because we had not yet imputed the code which would permit us to refresh our pages. So that is it. That is how we're going to work it out. Each time there's going to be any change here, if I remove this account in the accounting entry, the trial balance will be aware of it, that this account has nothing, and also the income statement will also show nothing because it is refreshing, and we can be sure that the values are just exactly the way we want it to be. So this income statement is just very much ready to be used, just that it might not show all the details like cost of goods sold and so on, but you can do further analysis on the account types in order to figure out all those type of accounts. Like for example, in creating your account natures, you could put different account natures like cost of goods sold accounts, like fixed assets, current liabilities, so that when you are creating an account number at the level of the chart of account, you can mention its account nature. Then when building your income statement at this level, you divide your income statement into different tables to portray the different type of informations that will appear, like revenues, like cost of goods sold accounts, like other expenses, like operational expenses, and you will see at the end of the day you can easily make your calculations and get things sorted within a short period of time. Hope you like this video. You can try, before watching the next video, you can try coming up with a balance sheet on your own, so you can see whether your proficiency at the level of understanding pivot tables in building something is actually good. So get to you, however, in the next video, where we are going to be working on the balance sheet.